Good morning, folks. It's your old Uncle Jason here. I'm going to serve you up some spiritual breakfast from Our Daily Bread. So let's get into it, shall we? Today's Bible reading for Saturday, November 16th, 2024, is taken from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 17, verses 17 through 26 and 32. So turn to it with me. 17. There we are. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run them to the camp of thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. And now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. As he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the man that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach of Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight this Philistine. Bold words indeed, folks. Bold words indeed. So the article today, entitled Delivering Help, is written by Kirsten Holmberg. When Heather's job took her to Tim's house to deliver his takeout meal, he asked her to help him untie the knot in the food bag. Tim had suffered a stroke a few years prior and no longer had the ability to untie the knot himself. Heather cheerfully obliged. Throughout the rest of her day, Heather's thoughts returned to Tim frequently, and he was inspired to assemble a care package for him. When Tim later found the hot cocoa and red blanket she'd left at his door with an encouraging note, he was moved to tears. Heather's delivery became much more significant than she originally anticipated. The same was true when Jesse sent his young son David to supply his brothers with food when the Israelites, quote, drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. When David arrived with the bread and cheese, he learned Goliath had been instilling fear in God's people with his daily taunting. David was incensed by Goliath's defiance of, quote, the armies of the living God, and was moved to respond by saying to King Saul, Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. God sometimes uses the circumstances of our daily lives to put us in places where he wants to use us. Let's keep our eyes and hearts open to see where and how he might want us to serve someone else. Now, folks, in that is a valuable lesson. God uses the simple to confound the wise. You were created for a time such as this. Wherever you are right now, wherever it may be, no matter the circumstance, no matter the obstacle that is in your way, God put you there for a reason. You need to get this in your spirit. Listen now. God is the ruler of the world. He allows and disallows everything for his purpose. Now, you need to understand that everything that is thrown at you meant for evil will be turned around used for good if and only if you yourself come to know and trust and rely on the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He is God. He rules the world in truth and in grace. Nothing happens on this planet without him knowing about it. Now understand that there is the element of free will. He allows it only for a time, but then there comes a reckoning. It is not His silence oftentimes is mistaken for acceptance of certain things, and oftentimes people who don't believe, or people who are violently against the Lord, will often use this. If God is so benevolent, why does he allow X, Y, and Z? The most common one is bone cancer in children and diseases of various things. That is a very valid question, but let me drop some truth on you here. This is the result of countless generations of foolish breeding. We humans are essentially in a box. Most folks don't travel very far from their birthplace. Hence, the problem. We are inbreeding in various forms because of the way the world is. The longer you stay the place of your birth, the more likely it's going to be that you'll find somebody in your family line along the way. Hence, the hereditary diseases. And all of them, at least in the theory that I have come to accept, is the result of that. Humans have corrupted themselves. If you don't believe me, listen to this. In the Old Testament, when the people mentioned in those texts, why do you think they went far away from where they were to another part? So that they could breed properly. God instructed them, don't take wives from this tribe, but you can take wives from this tribe. Don't do this, but you can do this, and so on and so forth. Now I'm paraphrasing, mind you, but this is one of the reasons why I caution you to think of this stuff with an open mind and heart, and understand the way God operates, and understand that there are very real consequences for certain actions and choices that we make, and all of them are all too often unpleasant. So you think about that for a moment. Now back to what I was saying about the article. You yourself are appointed for a time such as this. You were created for where you are right now. Wherever it may be, like David was, he was sent. And when he was there, he was instant in season and out of season. He looked and defied the armies of the Philistines. And you understand, Goliath was a giant. I forget exactly his measurements, but he was a very tall, imposing figure. Very, very intimidating. Those who didn't understand God's way were moved in fear. We, as individuals, have giants in our life that need to be brought down. But understand that the battle is not yours, but God's. And ultimately, Goliath was felled by a sling and a smooth rock. Now understand that there are physical aspects of the sling and that smooth rock, as a skilled sling thrower could wield that with deadly precision. The sling was one of the most commonly used weapons on the battlefield. It was very formidable. Imagine a rock the size of your fist being hurled at you at 100 miles an hour. That's often more deadly than even a bullet. It was used up until the invention of the bow and arrow, and even with the bow and arrow, as the rock was more efficient at times because it was so readily available. So that's just a little food for thought for you. One hit, right between the eyes, knocked a giant to the ground, and using his own sword, had his head cut off. Now imagine that giant of a sword, a sword of a giant, used to cut off the thing's head. That took a lot of strength, and for a shepherd, that's saying something. So I believe that God endowed him with spiritual strength in that moment to rend the head from the giant's body. Think about that, folks. Just think about that. Now, back to more present times. Wherever you are, use it as an opportunity to bring somebody to the Lord, to preach the gospel, even if you don't say a word. Let the Spirit of the Lord flow through you. So in keeping to that, remember that well. So, without further gilding the lily, and without further ado, I leave you with this final word. Even if you stare death in the face, I pray all you see is God's grace. And until we meet again, stay safe, stay blessed, and as always, stay in the shadow of the Almighty. This is your old Uncle Jason, signing off.